The fist came before the scream. Calvin Richards' knuckles crashed into Danielle's jaw, spinning her body like a rag doll before she collapsed against the cracked kitchen tiles. Blood filled her mouth, warm and metallic. "You think you can hide money from me?" he roared, his massive frame looming over her like a storm cloud. She gasped, curling tight as his boot slammed into her ribs. Once, twice, each kick punctuated by his rum-soaked breath. "I raised you, fed you, and you can't even give your father what he asks for." His hand shot down, yanking her hair until her neck bent at an impossible angle. Tears carved paths through the blood on her face. But it was his next words that froze her soul. "If you won't give me your money," his voice dropped to a venomous whisper, "then you'll give me what I really own. This body, Danielle. Everything about you is mine." Horror exploded in her chest. His rough hands tore at her red dress, fabric ripping as he pressed closer, his laugh hollow and cruel, echoing off the walls like a death sentence. "No!" Danielle thrashed, her hand searching blindly across the floor until her fingers closed around cold glass. A broken bottle. She didn't think. She swung. The glass exploded against his temple, blood spraying as Calvin collapsed with a roar. Danielle didn't wait to see if he'd rise. She ran, barefoot into the Kingston night, her torn red dress flapping against her thighs, the sound of her father's curses chasing her like demons. Behind her, she heard him stirring, staggering to his feet, bellowing her name into the darkness. Her chest burned as she ran toward the docks. Anywhere but home. Before we dive into Danielle's terrifying journey, and you hate injustice, hit that subscribe button and comment below where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. The blow landed before Danielle could even scream. Calvin Richards' fist crashed against her cheek, sending her sprawling across the kitchen floor. Pain exploded in her face, blood filling her mouth. "You think you can starve me?" he spat, kicking her in the ribs. "Your own father? You had money for food but none for my drink?" Danielle gasped, curling into herself. But the kicks kept coming. "I asked for one thing," he shouted, staggering above her, his voice thick with alcohol and rage. "One bottle, and you told me no?" He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back until tears spilled down her bruised face. His breath reeked of rum as his eyes darkened with something worse than rage, something unspeakable. "If you won't give me money," his voice dropped low and venomous, "then you'll give me something else. You'll give me this body, Danielle." Her stomach twisted in horror. His rough hands tore at her red dress, fabric ripping as his body pressed closer, his laugh hollow and cruel. "No!" Danielle thrashed, desperation flooding her veins. "Don't touch me." Her hand groped blindly across the floor until it found something, a broken bottle, jagged and sharp. With a wild scream, she swung. The bottle smashed against his head, blood spraying as he collapsed with a groan. Danielle didn't look back. She ran out the door into the night, her bare feet pounding the street. Behind her, she heard him stirring, cursing, calling her name with murderous fury. Her chest heaved, tears blinding her as she sprinted toward the only place she could think of, the docks. The smell of salt and diesel filled her lungs as she stumbled between shipping containers, her torn dress catching on metal corners. Behind her, his voice echoed through the alleys. "Danielle!" She ducked behind a stack of crates, pressing her hand over her mouth to silence her gasping breaths. In the distance, she heard him searching, his heavy footsteps growing closer. Her eyes darted frantically until she saw it, a cargo container, its door still open, waiting to be sealed. Without thinking, she climbed inside. Darkness swallowed her whole as she pressed herself against the cold metal wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. Outside, his shadow passed by. Then came the sound she'd been praying for, the metallic clang of the container door swinging shut. The lock clicking into place. Danielle exhaled shakily in the pitch-black space. She had no idea where this ship was going. She didn't care. All she knew was this. Anywhere was better than home. Days blurred together in the suffocating darkness. The ship rocked. She rationed the little water she'd found in abandoned bottles. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. Fear never left, but neither did hope. When the container finally opened, blinding sunlight poured in. Korean voices shouted orders. The smell of the sea was different here, sharper, colder. Danielle stumbled out into Busan port, disoriented and weak. She had made it. To South Korea, to freedom, or so she thought. Danielle wandered through Seoul's back alleys like a ghost. Her torn red dress drew stares. Her bruised face made people look away. She had no money, no plan, no one, just survival. One night, hunger drove her toward the sound of voices in a dark alley. Maybe someone would spare food. Maybe she could find work. Instead, she walked straight into a war zone. Gunshots exploded. Men in black suits moved like shadows, their weapons glinting under flickering streetlights. Two rival gangs, locked in combat. Danielle froze. One of the men spotted her. His eyes narrowed. He raised his gun. "Witness," he hissed in Korean. "Eliminate her." 3 armed men advanced on her, weapons trained on her trembling frame. Danielle's legs wouldn't move. Her voice wouldn't come. This was it. She'd escaped one monster only to die in a foreign land. Then, "Stop." The voice was cold, commanding, final. The men froze instantly. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in an immaculate black suit. His presence alone made the air feel heavier. Taeyang Lee, the Korean Mafia king. His dark eyes swept over Danielle, the torn red dress, the fading bruises, the terror and defiance warring in her gaze. His men waited for orders. "My lord," one of them urged. "She saw everything. We can't let her." "Bring her," Taeyang interrupted, his voice quiet but absolute. The men hesitated, then obeyed. Danielle staggered as rough hands grabbed her arms. She tried to pull away, but her body had nothing left. Taeyang stepped closer, studying her with an unreadable expression. Blood on her dress, bruises painted across her skin like a map of suffering. But her eyes, those eyes burned with something his men lacked. Survival, fire, refusal to break. "Who hurt you?" he asked quietly. Danielle's lip trembled. She didn't answer. Taeyang's jaw tightened. He recognized that silence. The kind born from trauma too deep for words. "Take her to the safe house," he ordered. "No one touches her. No one questions her. She stays." His lieutenant stepped forward, confused. "But my lord." "We don't know. I said she stays." The men exchanged glances, but didn't argue. Danielle felt her knees buckle. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Taeyang's tattooed hand reaching out to steady her fall. When Danielle woke, she was no longer in the alley. She was in a bed softer than clouds, surrounded by luxury she'd never seen. But the door was guarded, the windows barred. She'd escaped her father's prison, only to wake up in the fortress of the Korean Mafia king. The container had become Danielle's tomb. For 6 days, she lived in suffocating darkness, rationing sips from a discarded water bottle she'd found wedged in the corner. The ship rocked endlessly, making her stomach churn. Hunger became a constant companion, gnawing at her insides until she could barely think straight. But worse than the hunger was the silence. In that darkness, Calvin's voice haunted her. His hands, his breath, the sound of fabric tearing. When the container finally jolted to a stop, Danielle pressed herself against the cold metal wall, her heart hammering. Voices shouted in a language she didn't understand. Korean, sharp, efficient, foreign. The door swung open. Blinding sunlight poured in, and Danielle shielded her eyes, stumbling out onto the Busan docks. Workers moved like choreographed dancers, loading and unloading cargo with mechanical precision. No one noticed the thin Jamaican girl in a torn red dress slipping between containers like a shadow. She was invisible, and for the first time in her life, that felt like salvation. Danielle found a bus station by following the crowds. She had no money, but when a group of tourists dropped their tickets, she scooped one up and boarded the next bus to Seoul. The journey felt surreal. Korea was nothing like Kingston. Everything was clean, organized, efficient. Neon signs glowed even in daylight. People moved with purpose, their faces buried in phones, nobody making eye contact. She pressed her forehead against the window, watching the landscape blur past. "I'm safe," she told herself. "He can't find me here." But the lie tasted bitter even in her thoughts. Every time the bus slowed, her pulse spiked. Every time someone glanced her way, she tensed. Police uniforms made her flinch instinctively, though she'd done nothing wrong except exist where she didn't belong. When the bus finally reached Seoul, Danielle stepped off into a city that felt like another planet. Skyscrapers stretched toward the heavens. Cars honked in symphonies of impatience. The smell of street food, spicy, savory, unfamiliar, made her stomach cramp with longing. But she had no money, no plan, no one. For 3 days, Danielle survived on scraps. She slept in subway stations, tucked into corners where security cameras didn't reach. She learned quickly that blending in meant keeping her head down, moving with the crowds, never staying in one place too long. But hunger has a way of making people reckless. On the 4th night, desperation drove her into the back streets of Itaewon, where neon lights cast everything in shades of red and gold. She'd heard tourists talking about this area, expensive restaurants, nightlife, money. Maybe someone would spare food. Maybe she could beg without shame, just this once. Instead, she walked straight into hell. The alley was darker than the others, illuminated only by a single flickering streetlight. Danielle heard voices angry, tense, and froze. Then came the gunshots. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. Men in black suits moved with lethal grace, their weapons trained on rivals dressed in gray. Bodies fell, blood sprayed against brick walls. Danielle pressed herself against a dumpster, her scream trapped in her throat. This wasn't Kingston gang violence, messy, emotional, chaotic. This was surgical, professional, terrifying. One of the men in black spotted her. His eyes narrowed. He raised his gun, shouting something in Korean to his companions. 3 more weapons swung in her direction. Danielle's legs refused to move. Her voice wouldn't come. She was going to die in a foreign country, alone, unknown, unmissed, just like I deserve, some dark part of her whispered. Then, stop. The command cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Every man froze. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Danielle's breath caught. He was tall impossibly, so dressed in a black suit that seemed to absorb light. His face was all sharp angles and cold precision, handsome in the way a weapon is beautiful. Dark eyes swept the scene with the calm of a predator surveying his territory. But it was his hands that held Danielle's attention. Tattooed. Intricate patterns crawled up his fingers, disappearing beneath expensive cuffs. Hands that had killed. Hands that commanded empires. Taeyang Lee. Though she didn't know his name yet. His men waited, weapons still trained on Danielle but fingers no longer on triggers. Taeyang walked closer, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The gunfight had stopped entirely, both sides watching their leader with reverence bordering on fear. He stopped 3 feet from Danielle, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. She knew what he saw. A girl in a torn red dress, bruises fading to yellow-green across her cheekbones, blood dried at the corner of her mouth, barefoot, trembling, foreign. "Who is she?" one of his men asked in Korean. Taeyang's eyes never left Danielle's face. He saw the bruises, the torn fabric, the way she held herself curled inward, protective, like prey expecting another blow. But he also saw something else. In her eyes, behind the terror, burned something his men lacked. A refusal to break, a core of steel wrapped in trauma. "A witness," another man urged. "We can't let her." "No," Taeyang said quietly. The word fell like a gavel. His lieutenant stepped forward, confusion creasing his features. "My lord, she saw everything. The Jade Serpents will use her if she's not a spy. How do you—" "Look at her." The men looked. Taeyang crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to Danielle's eye level. When he spoke, his voice was softer, though still edged with authority. "Who hurt you?" The question was in English, accented but clear. Danielle's lip trembled. She wanted to answer, but her voice had abandoned her. All she could do was shake her head, tears threatening to spill. Taeyang studied her for a long moment. Then he rose, turning to his men. "Bring her, my lord. Now." The word carried such finality that no one dared argue. 2 men moved forward, gripping Danielle's arms. She tried to pull away, but her body had nothing left. Her legs gave out, vision swimming. The last thing she remembered was Taeyang's tattooed hand reaching out, catching her before she hit the ground. Then darkness. When she woke, she was no longer in the alley. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she'd ever felt. Silk sheets, down pillows. The room smelled of expensive cologne and something floral she couldn't name. For a confused moment, Danielle thought she'd died. Then she saw the bars on the windows. Her heart sank. She tried to sit up, but pain lanced through her ribs. A hand pressed gently against her shoulder, and she flinched violently. "Easy," a woman's voice said in accented English. "You're safe." Danielle turned to find a middle-aged woman in a medical uniform checking an IV line attached to her arm. "Where?" Danielle's voice cracked. "Where am I?" The woman's expression was kind but guarded. "Somewhere safe. You were dehydrated, malnourished. You need rest. I need to leave." "That's not my decision." The door opened, and Danielle's breath caught. Taeyang Lee entered, his presence filling the room like a storm. He'd changed clothes now, wearing black slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal those tattooed forearms. The nurse bowed deeply and left without a word. Danielle pulled the sheets tighter around herself, her pulse racing. Taeyang pulled a chair close to the bed and sat, studying her with those unreadable dark eyes. "You're awake," he said simply. "Let me go." "Where would you go?" The question hung in the air. Danielle had no answer. No money, no passport, no plan beyond surviving the next hour. Taeyang leaned back, his expression unchanging. "You walked into a war zone. Do you understand how close you came to dying?" Maybe that would have been better. Something flickered in his eyes. "You don't believe that. You don't know me." "No," he agreed. "But I know trauma when I see it." Danielle looked away, her jaw clenching. "Who hurt you?" Taeyang asked again, his voice quieter now. "Why do you care?" "Because you're in my world now, and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours." His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Not yet." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sparked something dangerous in her chest. Anger. "I didn't ask to be here," she said, meeting his gaze defiantly. "I didn't ask to be saved, and yet here you are. So what now? You keep me prisoner? Would you prefer I'd left you in that alley?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, Taeyang rose. "Rest, eat, heal. When you're ready, we'll talk." He moved toward the door. "What's your name?" Danielle asked suddenly. He paused, glancing back. Taeyang Lee. Taeyang Lee. "And who are you?" His smile was cold, knowing. "Someone your father would be wise to fear." The door closed behind him. Danielle sat frozen, his words echoing in her mind. How did he know about my father? Danielle woke to the smell of food. Not just any food, ackee and saltfish. The scent so familiar it brought tears to her eyes. For a moment, she forgot where she was, expecting to find herself back in Kingston, her mother humming in the kitchen. Then reality crashed back. The silk sheets, the barred windows, the guards outside her door. A tray sat on the bedside table. Perfectly plated Jamaican breakfast. Fresh fruit, tea. Someone had researched her, studied her, known exactly what would lower her defenses. The thought chilled her more than the bars on the windows. Danielle ate anyway. Survival trumped pride. She'd just finished when the door opened. Not Taeyang this time, but a thin man in glasses carrying a leather folder. His expression was clinical, detached. "Miss Richards," he said in perfect English. "I'm Kim Min-jae, Mr. Lee's chief of security. I have questions." Danielle set down her fork. "I don't have answers. We'll see." He opened the folder, pulling out photographs. "These men. Do you know them?" The pictures showed faces from the alley, the men in gray who'd been shooting at Taeyang's soldiers. "No." "Have you ever seen them before that night?" "No." "Do you work for the Jade Serpent Syndicate?" "I don't even know what that is." Min-jae's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe you just wandered into one of the most dangerous territories in Seoul by accident?" "I expect you to believe the truth." Danielle's voice hardened. "I'm Jamaican. I got here 6 days ago in a cargo container. I was hungry, lost, and desperate. I walked into that alley looking for food, not a gang war. Convenient story. It's the truth." "Then tell me." Min-jae leaned forward. "Who are you running from?" Danielle's breath caught. "We traced your entry. Illegal. No passport control. No record until that night." He slid another photo across the bed. "But there was a missing persons report filed in Kingston, Jamaica, for a Danielle Richards, age 23. Last seen fleeing her home after allegedly attacking her father." The photo showed Calvin clean-shaven, dressed nicely, looking like a grieving parent instead of the monster he was. Danielle's stomach turned. "That's not he's lying. He's..." The words tangled in her throat. How could she explain? How could she make them understand? "He hurt you." It wasn't a question. Danielle looked up sharply. Min-jae's expression hadn't changed, but something in his tone had softened. "The bruises, the torn clothes, the way you flinch at sudden movements." He closed the folder. "I've seen trauma before. Miss Richards, yours is distinct." Tears burned behind Danielle's eyes. She refused to let them fall. "Wa mek ya care?" The patois slipped out before she could stop it. A defense mechanism, reverting to her mother tongue when English felt too vulnerable. Min-jae blinked. "Excuse me? Why do you care?" She translated, her voice shaking. "Why does he care? I'm nobody. Just let me go. Mr. Lee doesn't make decisions lightly." "Then tell Mr. Lee I don't need his protection. That's not your choice anymore." The finality in his voice made her want to scream. Min-jae stood, collecting his folder. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you. But you can't leave. That's called kidnapping. That's called survival." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your father is looking for you, Miss Richards. He's already contacted Jamaican authorities, claiming you were trafficked. If he finds you..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The door closed, leaving Danielle alone with her racing thoughts. Hours passed. Danielle explored her prison. The room was luxurious, king-sized bed, private bathroom with a shower that felt like rain, a closet filled with clothes in her size. Everything expensive, everything controlled. She tried the door, locked, the windows, barred. She was trapped. Again, different cage, same bird, she thought bitterly. Night fell. Danielle sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Then the lock clicked. Taeyang entered, carrying a tray himself this time. He set it down, more food, though she hadn't asked, and took the chair across from her. They sat in silence for a long moment. "Min-jae says you don't trust us," Taeyang finally said. "Should I?" "No." His honesty surprised her. "Trust is earned. I haven't earned yours yet." "Then why am I here?" Taeyang leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you walked into my territory bruised, starving, and terrified. Because you looked at my men with guns pointed at you and didn't beg. Because," he paused, "because I've seen what men like your father do to their daughters." Danielle's breath hitched. "I won't ask you to tell me what happened." Taeyang continued quietly. "But I will ask you this. Do you want him to find you?" "No." The word came out broken. "Then stay." "As what?" "Your prisoner?" "As someone under my protection." "Why?" Danielle demanded, frustration boiling over. "Why would you protect me? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you." Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an unexpected weight. "My mother was beaten by my father for 15 years. Every night I listened to her scream. Every morning, she told me it was her fault." His jaw tightened. "When I was 17, I killed him." Danielle's eyes widened. "So when I see a woman with bruises shaped like handprints," Taeyang continued, his gaze never leaving hers, "I don't ask questions. I act." The rawness in his confession left her speechless. Nobody touches her. Nobody questions her. She stays. Taeyang rose, moving toward the door. "Those were my orders. They stand. I can't stay here forever. You can stay until you're safe." He paused at the threshold. "Your father won't stop looking. Men like him never do. But he'll have to go through me to reach you. And if I say no?" Taeyang turned, his expression unreadable. "Then you're free to leave. But you won't survive 3 days in Seoul without papers, money, or language." He was right. They both knew it. Danielle hated how much that truth hurt. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "Good." Taeyang's lips curved slightly. "Get some rest, Miss Richards." "It's Danielle." "Danielle." He tested the name, his accent wrapping around the syllables. "Get some rest, Danielle." The door closed. Danielle sat alone, her mind spinning. She'd escaped one monster, only to fall into the orbit of another feared man. But this one terrifyingly felt different. Across the ocean, Calvin Richards sat in a Jamaican police station, his performance perfected. "Please," he begged, tears in his eyes. "She's all I have left. These traffickers took my baby girl. I just want her back." The officer nodded sympathetically, filing paperwork. Calvin smiled inwardly. "She can't hide forever. If you're still here, you're invested in Danielle's survival. Hit that like button and subscribe." Calvin Richards had always been good at playing victim. In the Kingston police station, he sat hunched over, dabbing at fake tears with a handkerchief while officers took notes. His performance was Oscar-worthy, the grieving father, helpless and desperate. "She's a good girl," he said, voice breaking. "Never caused trouble. Then these men came, took her right from our home, said they'd make her work overseas." He covered his face. "Please, help me find my daughter." The officer's expression softened. "We'll do everything we can, Mr. Richards." What they didn't know was that Calvin had spent the last 3 weeks bribing every contact he had. Immigration officers, corrupt officials, anyone who could help him track Danielle across oceans. Because Calvin Richards didn't just want his daughter back. He wanted revenge. The money she'd cost him. The scar she'd left on his face. The shame of being bested by a girl. He'd make her pay for all of it. By the time he left the station, he had what he needed. A false report claiming Danielle had been trafficked, special travel documents marked urgent family reunification, and contacts in South Korea who owed him favors. Calvin booked his flight that afternoon. Seoul, South Korea. Departure in 48 hours. He smiled, fingering the scar on his temple. "Soon, Danielle. Soon." Meanwhile, in Taeyang's safe house, Danielle was beginning to realize just how deep this world went. She'd been there a week. The routine was gentle but absolute. Meals delivered at precise times, guards rotating outside her door. Min-jae checking on her daily with updates she didn't ask for, but it was Taeyang's visits that unsettled her most. He came every evening, always bringing something. Books in English, Jamaican music downloads, small gestures that showed he was paying attention. They'd sit in careful silence, or he'd ask simple questions about Jamaica, nothing about her father, nothing triggering, just conversation. It confused her. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked one night. Taeyang looked up from the tablet he'd been reading. "Would you prefer I wasn't?" "I'd prefer honesty." "Then honestly?" He set the tablet aside. "You remind me of someone I failed to protect. I won't fail again. Your mother." He didn't confirm or deny, but the tightness around his eyes said everything. Danielle pulled her knees to her chest. "I'm not her." "No, you're alive." His voice carried an edge of something painful. "That makes you someone worth protecting." Before Danielle could respond, Min-jae burst through the door, tablet in hand, expression urgent. "My lord." He bowed quickly. "We have a problem." Taeyang was on his feet instantly. Speak. Our contact in Jamaican immigration flagged something. Min Jae pulled up a document. Calvin Richards obtained special travel documents yesterday. He's claiming his daughter was trafficked. He's using official channels to track her. Danielle's blood ran cold. Where is he now? Taeyang's voice was ice. He landed in Busan 2 hours ago. Our surveillance picked him up entering Seoul 30 minutes ago. The room tilted. No, Danielle whispered. No. He couldn't have. Her breath came in short gasps. The walls closed in. Calvin's face swam before her eyes, his hands, his voice, the sound of fabric tearing. Danielle. Taeyang's voice cut through the panic. Look at me, but she couldn't. She was back in Kingston, trapped, helpless. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, not rough, but firm. Danielle, breathe. She tried. Failed. Her chest heaved, hyperventilating. Taeyang did something unexpected. He pulled her forward, wrapping his arms around her, holding her against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, calm, an anchor in her storm. He won't touch you, Taeyang said quietly, fiercely. I swear on my life, he won't touch you. Gradually, Danielle's breathing slowed. She realized she was clutching Taeyang's shirt, her face pressed against him, and pulled back quickly. Sorry, Don't apologize. Taeyang released her, but his gaze remained intense. Tell me everything. Now. So she did. Everything she'd been holding back poured out. The years of abuse, the escalating violence. The night he'd tried to. She couldn't finish that sentence. She didn't have to. Taeyang's expression darkened with each word, his jaw clenching so hard she thought it might crack. When she finished, silence stretched between them. Finally, he stood. His voice, when he spoke, was colder than she'd ever heard it. Min Jae. Double all security. I want eyes on every entrance to Seoul. If Calvin Richards so much as breathes near this building, I want to know. He turned to Danielle. He won't find you. Even if he does, he won't get past my men. You don't understand, Danielle said, voice shaking. He's relentless. He doesn't stop. Neither do I. The certainty in those words should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel safe for the first time in weeks. That night, Danielle couldn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like Calvin. She paced her room, wearing a path in the expensive carpet. Around 2 a.m., she heard movement outside her door. She froze. The door opened slowly. Taeyang entered, carrying a chair from the hallway. He said nothing, just positioned it beside her door and sat, tablet in hand. What are you doing? Danielle asked. Working. Here? You're afraid. It wasn't a question. I'm staying. You don't have to. I know. He didn't elaborate, just sat there, working silently while she processed this strange act of protection. Finally, exhaustion won. Danielle crawled into bed, and for the first time since Calvin arrived in Seoul, she slept. When she woke at dawn, Taeyang was still there. The chair had moved closer to her bed. His jacket was draped over the back. He'd fallen asleep sitting up, tablet dark in his lap, guarding her door even in unconsciousness. Danielle stared at him. This complex, dangerous man who killed without hesitation but stayed awake to protect her nightmares. She didn't understand him, but against every instinct, she was starting to trust him. Calvin Richards stood outside the Black Dragon Syndicate headquarters, hidden in the shadows across the street. He'd paid good money for this address, cost him 3 bribes and 2 threats, but he had it now. Somewhere in that building was his daughter, his property. Calvin smiled, touching the gun hidden beneath his jacket. Soon, Danielle. Very soon. Min Jae's security team spotted him within the hour. My lord, Min Jae reported, showing Taeyang the surveillance footage. Calvin Richards. Confirmed ID. He's been watching the building for 2 hours. Taeyang studied the image. A large man. Scarred face. Eyes burning with obsessive intensity. He's scouting, Taeyang said coldly. Learning our patterns. Should we eliminate him? Not yet. Too many witnesses. It would cause problems with immigration. Taeyang's jaw tightened. But mobilize everyone. If he makes a move, I want him contained. And Miss Richards? She doesn't leave her room. She doesn't know he's this close. Understood. But keeping secrets in the underworld was impossible. That afternoon, Danielle was staring out her barred window when she saw him. Just a glimpse. A familiar silhouette across the street, watching her window. Calvin. The scream caught in her throat. The room spun. She collapsed, her body shaking violently as panic seized her completely. Taeyang rushed in seconds later, alerted by the guards. He found her on the floor, hyperventilating, unable to speak. Danielle. He knelt beside her, his hands hovering, afraid to touch without permission. Danielle, what happened? She could only point at the window, her hand trembling. Taeyang looked, saw nothing. But he understood. You saw him? A tiny nod. Taeyang's expression shifted into something truly dangerous. He lifted Danielle carefully, carrying her to the bed, then turned to Min-jae, who'd followed him in. Lockdown. Now. Nobody in or out. Triple the guards on her floor. His voice dropped to something deadly. And find Calvin Richards. I don't care how. Find him. Min-jae bowed and left. Taeyang turned back to Danielle, who was curled into herself, shaking. He did something he'd never done for anyone. He sat on the edge of her bed, one hand gently rubbing her back in slow circles, and spoke in a voice she'd never heard from him, soft, almost broken. I won't let him touch you. I swear on my life, Danielle. On everything I've built. He will not hurt you again. For the first time, Taeyang Lee's voice cracked, and Danielle heard it. This wasn't just protection. This was something deeper. Something neither of them had names for yet. My best friend said no one would stick around for a story this intense. Prove her wrong, hit subscribe and drop a comment in the comments if you're still here. Next chapter is where everything changes forever. Don't miss it. The lockdown lasted 3 days. Danielle wasn't allowed near windows. Guards rotated every 2 hours. Min-jae's surveillance team tracked Calvin's every movement through Seoul's CCTV network. He was hunting. Methodically. Systematically. And he was getting closer. On the 4th morning, Taeyang called Danielle to his office. She'd never been in this part of the building. The hallways were darker here, lined with expensive art and subtle menace. Guards nodded as she passed, their respect for Taeyang evident in every gesture. The office itself was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, minimalist furniture, and an aura of absolute power. Taeyang stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. Sit, he said without turning. Danielle sat, her pulse racing. Finally, he turned to face her, his expression unreadable. I've been thinking about your situation, he began. Calvin won't stop. He's using official channels, which limits what I can do publicly. Immigration is watching. If he claims you're being held against your will, I'd rather die than go back to him. It won't come to that. Taeyang moved to his desk, pulling out a document. But I need your cooperation. What kind of cooperation? He slid the paper toward her. It was dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out. Public relationship, mutual protection, binding agreement. I don't understand, Danielle said. Taeyang leaned against his desk, arms crossed. The Korean underworld operates on power and perception. If you're seen as mine publicly, officially then touching you becomes an act of war against me. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? I want you to be under my protection in a way that even immigration authorities will respect. If you're romantically involved with a South Korean citizen, especially one of my standing, it complicates deportation. This is insane. This is survival. His gaze was steady. Calvin can't reach you if the entire criminal underworld knows you belong to me. I don't belong to anyone. Then consider it a performance. Taeyang's voice softened slightly. One that keeps you alive. Danielle stared at the contract, her mind racing. And if I say no, then I continue protecting you as I have been, but my options become limited. He paused. Danielle, I'm offering you a shield. One Calvin can't penetrate. She looked up at him, searching for deception. Found only grim honesty. How long? Until he gives up or... Taeyang didn't finish. Or until I eliminate him. Danielle heard in the silence. She picked up the pen, her hand trembling. What do I have to do? Appear with me at public events. Let my people spread word that you're under my personal protection. Act the part when necessary. And in private? In private, nothing changes. You have your space. I have mine. It sounded simple, transactional, safe. Danielle signed. The first public appearance was that evening. Taeyang's stylist transformed her. Elegant black dress, subtle makeup, hair styled in soft waves. When Danielle looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The event was at an exclusive restaurant, one of Taeyang's holdings. The room was filled with powerful people, politicians, businessmen, and those who operated in the shadows between legal and criminal. Everyone knew who Taeyang Lee was, and now they'd know about her. Taeyang arrived to collect her personally, dressed in a sharp black suit. When he saw her, something flickered in his expression, surprise. Maybe appreciation before his usual mask returned. Ready? He asked. No. His lips twitched. Honest. Good. He offered his arm. After a moment's hesitation, Danielle took it. The restaurant fell silent when they entered. Every eye turned. Every conversation stopped. Taeyang guided her through the room with absolute confidence, introducing her to people whose names she immediately forgot. His hand stayed at the small of her back, possessive without being aggressive, protective without being controlling. The message was clear. She's mine. Danielle played her part, smiling when appropriate, staying close, letting Taeyang's presence shield her from the weight of all those stares. But it was exhausting. By the time they returned to the car, She was drained. You did well, Taeyang said as they drove back. I felt like a prop. You were a statement. He glanced at her. By morning, everyone in Seoul's underworld will know you're under my protection, including your father. The thought should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like trading one cage for another. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Danielle and Taeyang developed a routine. He taught her basic Korean phrases enough to navigate Seoul safely. She taught him Jamaican patois, laughing when his pronunciation stumbled over the unfamiliar rhythms. She cooked Caribbean dishes in the safe house kitchen, filling the sterile space with smells of home. Taeyang ate everything she made, even when jerk seasoning made his eyes water. They watched movies together in comfortable silence, discussed books, argued about music. Slowly, the performance began to feel less like acting. Danielle caught herself watching him the way he moved, the rare moments when his guard dropped, the unexpected gentleness in how he treated her. Taeyang caught himself doing the same. The attraction was inconvenient, dangerous. Neither acknowledged it. Then came the nightmare. Danielle woke, gasping. Calvin's face seared into her mind. His hands on her, his breath, the sound of fabric tearing. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't escape. Her door burst open. Taeyang rushed in, wearing only sleep pants, his hair disheveled, eyes wild with concern. Danielle. She couldn't speak, could only shake, tears streaming down her face. Taeyang didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the bed, pulling her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her like a fortress. You're safe, he whispered fiercely. Nobody will hurt you again. I promise. I swear. You're safe. He repeated it like a mantra, until her breathing slowed, until the trembling stopped, until she could think clearly again. I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest. Don't apologize. Ever. They stayed like that, wrapped together in the darkness. And then Danielle tilted her head up. Taeyang looked down. Their faces were inches apart. This is a bad idea, he said quietly. I know. Neither moved away. The kiss happened slowly, tentative, questioning, giving each other every opportunity to stop. Neither did. What started gentle became desperate. Weeks of tension, fear, attraction, and unspoken emotion poured out in that moment. Taeyang pulled back first, his forehead against hers. We should stop. I know. This changes everything. I know. But when he kissed her again, neither of them cared. That night, in the darkness of her room, two broken people found something resembling wholeness in each other. Morning came too quickly. Danielle woke to find Taeyang still there, sitting at the edge of her bed, already dressed, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Regrets? She asked quietly. No. His voice was certain. You? I don't know yet. He nodded, understanding. I should go. Taeyang. He paused at the door. What does this mean? Danielle asked. I don't know, he admitted. But whatever it means, it doesn't change my promise. You're safe. Always. He left, and Danielle stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning. What had they done? 5 weeks later, Danielle missed her period. At first, she told herself it was stress, trauma, the upheaval of her entire life. But deep down, she knew. The test confirmed it 3 days later, pregnant. Danielle sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the positive result, her world tilting on its axis. A baby. Taeyang's baby. What have we done? Telling Taeyang felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Danielle rehearsed the words 100 times in her mind, but none of them felt right. I'm pregnant. Too blunt. We need to talk. Too ominous. Remember that night 5 weeks ago? Too casual for something this life-altering. She finally settled on asking him to her room after dinner. Taeyang arrived promptly, his expression guarded. They'd been carefully distant since that night. Professional, polite, dancing around the elephant in every room. You wanted to see me? He asked. Danielle's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to hide it. I need to tell you something. His posture shifted subtly, preparing for bad news. In his world, conversations that started like this rarely ended well. I'm pregnant. The words dropped like stones into still water. Taeyang went completely still. His face betrayed nothing, but Danielle saw his hands clench once before relaxing. Processing, calculating. The silence stretched until she couldn't bear it. Say something, she whispered. How long have you known? 3 days. And it's yours. Yes. She met his gaze. I haven't been with anyone else. Haven't even left this building except with you. More silence. Then Taeyang moved to the window, staring out at Seoul's glittering skyline. When he spoke, his voice was eerily calm. What do you want to do? The question surprised her. She'd expected anger, accusations, demands, not choice. I don't know, Danielle admitted. I'm terrified. I'm in a foreign country, hunted by my father, living in a mafia safe house. And now I'm pregnant with," she gestured helplessly at him, "with a crime lord's baby. This is insane." "Yes," Taeyang agreed quietly. "It is." He turned to face her, and Danielle saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not anger. Something softer. "You won't raise this child alone," he said. "Taeyang, I mean it, Danielle." He crossed to her, kneeling so they were eye level. "Whatever you decide, keep it. Don't keep it, I'm with you. But if you choose to have this baby," his hand hovered near her still flat stomach, "then they're mine. Both of you. And I protect what's mine." Tears spilled down Danielle's cheeks. "You don't have to." "I want to." The certainty in his voice undid her. Taeyang pulled her into his arms, and Danielle cried against his shoulder relief. Fear, gratitude, terror all mixed together. "We'll figure this out," he murmured. Together. The next morning, Danielle woke to find her room transformed. Prenatal vitamins on her nightstand. A pregnancy nutrition guide in both English and Korean. A note in Taeyang's precise handwriting. "Doctor appointment scheduled for tomorrow. I'll be there." True to his word, he was. The private clinic was pristine, the doctor discreet and professional. Taeyang sat beside Danielle during the examination, his hand finding hers when the ultrasound wand pressed against her stomach. "There," the doctor said, pointing to the screen. A tiny flicker, a heartbeat. Danielle gasped. Taeyang's grip on her hand tightened. "Approximately 6 weeks," the doctor continued. "Everything looks healthy. Due date around." But Danielle wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at that flickering heartbeat, her free hand pressed against her mouth. Real. This was real. Taeyang hadn't looked away from the screen either. His expression was unreadable, but his thumb stroked circles on the back of her hand, unconscious, gentle, reverent. The changes started immediately. Taeyang became obsessed with her well-being in ways that were simultaneously endearing and overwhelming. He monitored her diet personally, researching Jamaican pregnancy traditions, and working with the cook to blend Korean and Caribbean nutrition. When morning sickness hit, he held her hair back without flinching, bringing ginger tea and crackers at 3 a.m. He upgraded her room to the safest part of the building, no windows facing the street, reinforced door, panic button by the bed. He attended every doctor's appointment, taking notes, asking questions the doctor barely had time to answer. His men noticed. Whispers spread through the organization. The Korean mafia king was changing. "You're hovering," Danielle said one afternoon, watching Taeyang adjust her pillows for the third time. "I'm ensuring your comfort. You're smothering me." He paused, then sat back, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "Tell me if I'm too much." "You're too much." Noted, but he didn't move away. Danielle sighed. "Why are you doing all this? You're carrying my child." "That's not the only reason." Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly honest. "No, it's not." "Then what?" "I'm falling for you, Danielle." The admission came out rough, like he was confessing a weakness. "And I don't know what to do with that." Her breath caught. "You're not supposed to be temporary," he continued. "You were supposed to be a woman I protected until your father gave up. Instead, he gestured helplessly. "You're everything I didn't know I wanted." Danielle's eyes stung with sudden tears. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I. What if Calvin finds us? What if something happens to the baby? What if—" Taeyang cupped her face gently. "Then we face it together." This time, when he kissed her, it felt different, not desperate, not born of panic or attraction, but something deeper, something terrifyingly like love. As Danielle's pregnancy progressed, Taeyang's transformation became impossible to hide. He, who'd never shown mercy, personally ensured her comfort. He, who terrified his own men, smiled when the baby kicked. He, who'd built an empire on violence, spent hours researching baby-safe paint colors for a nursery. Min-jae watched it all with barely concealed shock. "My lord," he said one day, "your enemies are noticing. They're calling it weakness." Taeyang didn't look up from the baby furniture catalog. "Let them. Sir, this could be dangerous. If they perceive vulnerability, they perceive correctly." Taeyang set down the catalog, his gaze sharp. "I have something to lose now. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me absolutely ruthless about protecting it." The steel in his voice made Min-jae step back. "Understood, my lord." But danger was indeed circling. Calvin had gone quiet. Too quiet. Taeyang's surveillance teams reported his last known location was 3 days ago. Since then, nothing. "He's planning something," Taeyang told Min-jae grimly. "No one goes this silent unless they're about to strike. Double security? Triple it. I want eyes everywhere. If Calvin Richards so much as breathes near this building, I want to know." But deep down, Taeyang knew. The storm was coming. And when it broke, it would be catastrophic. That night, Danielle woke to Taeyang sitting at the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "I keep thinking about your father. He can't get in here." "I know." Taeyang turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. "But I also know men like him. They don't stop, they don't quit, and they certainly don't forgive." Danielle's hand instinctively went to her growing stomach. Taeyang noticed. His expression softened. "May I?" he asked, gesturing. She nodded. He placed his hand over hers, feeling the small bump beneath. At 20 weeks now, her pregnancy was becoming obvious. "I won't let him hurt either of you," Taeyang said quietly. "Whatever it takes, even if it means whatever it takes." The finality in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel safe. The next morning, Min-jae burst into Taeyang's office. "My lord, Calvin Richards, we found him." "Where?" "Seoul Underground. He's been meeting with the Jade Serpent Syndicate." Taeyang's blood ran cold. His enemies. The very organization that had been in that alley the night Danielle stumbled into his world. "He's making deals," Min-jae continued, "trading information about our operations in exchange for help reaching Miss Richards." "How much does he know?" "Too much. He knows she's here. He knows about the pregnancy." Taeyang's fist slammed against the desk. "Mobilize everyone. I want this building fortified like a fortress. No one in or out without my explicit permission. And Calvin? Find him. Track him. But don't touch him yet." Taeyang's eyes were cold. "He's going to make his move. And when he does, I'll be ready." Danielle sensed the shift immediately. More guards. Locked doors. Taeyang's visits becoming briefer, more distracted. "What's happening?" she asked. "Precautions." "Taeyang." He stopped at the door, his shoulders tense. "Your father is closer than we thought, but I won't let him reach you." "How close?" Taeyang turned, and the look in his eyes told her everything. "Very." The first sign came 3 days later. Danielle was reading in her room when she heard shouting from downstairs. Not normal organizational business, this was panic. Her door flew open. Min-jae, face grim. "Miss Richards, come with me. Now." "What's happening?" "No time. Move." He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the interior hallway. Guards flanked them, weapons drawn. Danielle's heart hammered. "Where's Taeyang?" Dealing with the situation. They reached a reinforced safe room, no windows, steel door, monitors showing every angle of the building. "Stay here," Min-jae ordered. "Don't open this door for anyone except Mr. Lee or myself." "Min-jae, you're scaring me." He paused, his expression softening slightly. "Your father was spotted 1 block away." The room tilted. No. He can't. He won't get in. We have 50 armed men between him and you." Min-jae's voice was firm. "But until Mr. Lee gives the all clear, you stay here." The door closed with a heavy thud. Danielle sank to the floor, her hands pressed against her pregnant belly, trying to calm her racing heart. Outside the building, Calvin Richards stood in the shadows, watching. He'd been patient, observant, learning routines, guard rotations, weak points. The Jade Serpents had given him blueprints, supply schedules, even the best times to strike. But Calvin didn't just want to breach the building. He wanted Taeyang Lee to know who was coming, wanted him to understand that no amount of money or power could keep Calvin from what belonged to him. So he stepped into the street light, letting the cameras see him clearly, and smiled. In the security room, alarms blared. "He's here," a guard announced. "Front entrance." Just standing there, Taeyang stared at the monitor, his expression carved from stone. Calvin Richards. Larger than the photos suggested, scarred face twisted in a mockery of a smile. Arms crossed, waiting. "He wants me to see him," Taeyang said quietly. "It's a psychological game," Min-jae replied. "He's trying to provoke you. It's working." Taeyang's hand went to the gun at his hip. "My lord, you can't." "Not in the open. The police." "I know." Taeyang forced himself to breathe. "Lockdown protocols. No one moves until I say." But his mind was screaming for blood. For 2 hours, Calvin simply stood there, watching, waiting. Every person inside the building felt the weight of his presence like a physical thing. Then, without warning, he walked away. "Where's he going?" Taeyang demanded. The surveillance team tracked him through CCTV, 3 blocks north, entering a hotel. "He's staying nearby," Min-jae said. "This was just reconnaissance." "No." Taeyang's jaw clenched. "This was a message. He's telling me he knows exactly where she is." That night, Taeyang finally retrieved Danielle from the safe room. She looked exhausted, terrified, her hands never leaving her stomach. "Is he gone?" she asked. "For now." "For now?" Her voice pitched higher. "Taeyang, he was right outside. What if—" "He won't get in, I promise." You keep promising. Danielle's control finally broke. But he keeps getting closer. He saw me, Taeyang. In Jamaica. He saw me at the window. Now he's outside your building. What's next? My room? While I'm sleeping? Tears streamed down her face. Taeyang pulled her into his arms despite her resistance. I won't let that happen. You can't know that. Yes, I can. He pulled back, forcing her to meet his eyes. Danielle, look at me. She did, and what she saw there stole her breath. Not calm calculation. Not cold certainty. Raw, desperate determination. I would burn this entire city to the ground before I let him touch you, Taeyang said, his voice shaking. Do you understand? There is no line I won't cross. No law I won't break. No man I won't kill. You and this baby are my world now, and I will protect my world. It was the first time his voice had broken. The first time she'd seen the mask completely slip, and it terrified her how much she believed him. I'm so scared, she whispered. So am I. His honesty undid her. Danielle collapsed against him, sobbing, all the fear and tension of the past months pouring out. Taeyang held her, one hand cradling her head, the other protective over her stomach, and made silent promises to the baby growing inside her. I will keep you safe. Both of you. Whatever it takes. 3 days later, Calvin made his next move. It came during a supply delivery. Normal procedure. Guards checked credentials, inspected cargo, approved entry. But one guard knew, undertrained, got sloppy. The knife was quick, silent. By the time anyone realized what had happened, Calvin Richards was inside the building. Alarms screamed, "Breach! North entrance! 1 guard down!" Number 1. Taeyang was moving before Min-jae finished speaking, gun in hand, security team mobilizing behind him. Where's Danielle? Her room, locked down. Get her to the underground exit, now. But Calvin was faster than they expected. He'd studied the blueprints, knew the layout, moved through the building like a ghost, avoiding guard patrols with practiced ease. Years of violence had taught him patience. And now, that patience paid off. He reached Danielle's floor before the evacuation could begin. Danielle heard the commotion shouting, running footsteps, alarms. Her door's electronic lock beeped, unlocking. She stood, backing away. Hello. The door opened. Calvin Richards stepped inside. For a moment, neither moved. Father and daughter, separated by months and oceans, finally face to face. He looked older, more worn, but his eyes held the same obsessive intensity that had chased her across the world. Hello, princess, he said softly. Danielle screamed. Calvin moved faster than she remembered, crossing the space in 2 strides, his hand clamping over her mouth. Quiet now. Don't make me hurt you worse. He pulled her against him, one arm crushing her against his chest, the other producing a gun. We're going home, he hissed. You, me, and that bastard growing inside you. Danielle struggled, but Calvin was too strong. He pressed the gun against her swollen stomach. Stop fighting, or I end this right now. She froze. Calvin smiled, feeling her surrender. Good girl. Taeyang burst onto the floor 30 seconds later, his men fanning out behind him. Calvin, he roared. The door to Danielle's room was open. Taeyang's blood ran cold. He entered slowly, gun raised, and found them. Calvin holding Danielle hostage, gun pressed to her pregnant belly, both of them trapped in a nightmare tableau. Danielle's eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her face. Calvin's smile was triumphant. The famous Taeyang Lee, Calvin said conversationally. I wondered when we'd meet. Let her go. She's my daughter. She's mine now. Is that right? Calvin laughed. You put a baby in her, and suddenly she belongs to you? That's not how family works, boy. Taeyang's gun never wavered. This is your only warning. Release her, and I'll let you leave Seoul alive. I don't think you will. Calvin's eyes glittered. See, I've done my research. You're a criminal, Mr. Lee. A very successful one. But you operate in shadows. You can't afford police attention. And if you shoot me here, with witnesses, with alarms blaring, he shrugged. That's messy. I don't care about messy. Oh, I think you do. Because Danielle won't survive messy. The gun pressed harder against Danielle's stomach. She whimpered. Taeyang's control was fraying. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger, consequences be damned. But Calvin was right. Danielle was too close. The angle was impossible. If he missed, then Danielle gasped, her face contorting in pain. What? Calvin started. Warm liquid soaked through her dress, pooling on the floor. Her water had broken. No, Danielle whispered. No, not now. Please, not now. She's in labor, Taeyang said, his voice deadly calm despite the panic in his eyes. Calvin. She needs a hospital. Now. She's fine. She's 24 weeks pregnant and in premature labor. She needs medical attention, or both of them will die. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Calvin's face. Danielle screamed as a contraction hit, her knees buckling. Calvin struggled to hold her upright, his concentration fracturing. And in that moment, Taeyang saw his opening, but before he could take it, a gunshot cracked. Calvin's head snapped back, blood spraying. He crumpled, releasing Danielle. She collapsed, screaming in pain and terror. Taeyang looked past her to see Minjae, rifle still raised, expression grim. Had the shot, Minjae said simply. Took it. Taeyang didn't waste time. He rushed to Danielle, catching her before she hit the floor. I've got you. I've got you. The baby, Danielle gasped between contractions. Taeyang, the baby. I know. We're going to the hospital right now. He lifted her into his arms, her blood and fluid soaking his shirt, and ran. Behind them, Calvin Richards bled out on the floor, his eyes frozen in permanent shock. The monster was dead. The hospital blurred past in fragments. Fluorescent lights overhead. The slap of Taeyang's shoes on linoleum. Danielle's screams echoing off sterile walls. 24 weeks. Taeyang was shouting at the intake desk. Premature labor. She needs help now. Nurses swarmed, transferring Danielle to a gurney, wheeling her toward the emergency wing. Taeyang tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. Sir, you can't. That's my child. I'm going in. Hospital protocol. Taeyang's expression turned lethal. I am going in. The nurse stepped aside. The delivery room was chaos. Doctors barking orders, monitors beeping frantically, Danielle screaming in pain and terror. 24 weeks is extremely premature, the lead doctor said, preparing instruments. The baby's survival chances. Do everything, Taeyang commanded. Cost doesn't matter. Just save them, both of them. The doctor nodded, turning back to Danielle. Taeyang moved to her side, taking her hand. She squeezed so hard he thought bones might crack. I'm here, he said. I'm right here. I'm scared, Danielle gasped. Taeyang, I'm so scared. It's too early. The baby isn't ready. What if? Don't think about what if. Focus on right now. Another contraction hit. Danielle arched, screaming. The doctor examined her. She's fully dilated. We need to deliver now. What about the NICU? A nurse asked, standing by. But the doctor didn't finish. But everyone in the room understood. 24 weeks. The edge of viability. This baby's chances were frighteningly slim. The delivery took 17 minutes that felt like 17 hours. Danielle pushed with everything she had, her hand crushing Taeyang's, tears and sweat soaking the bed beneath her. And then, a sound, tiny, fragile, barely there, a baby's cry. It's a girl, the doctor announced, quickly passing the infant to the waiting NICU team. Danielle collapsed back, gasping. She's breathing, a nurse said. Small but fighting. The NICU team worked frantically, clearing airways, checking vitals, wrapping the impossibly tiny body in warming blankets. 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Someone called out. Heart rate stable. Respiratory effort weak. She needs the incubator. Now. They wheeled the specialized equipment forward, preparing to move the baby to intensive care. Wait, Danielle said weakly. Let me see her. Please. The neonatologist hesitated, then carefully brought the tiny bundle over. The baby was smaller than a doll. Her skin was translucent, veins visible beneath. Her eyes were fused shut. She was covered in wires and tubes, but she was alive, and she was perfect. Danielle touched one impossibly small hand with her finger. The baby's miniature fingers curled around it instinctively. Hi, Danielle whispered, tears streaming. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. The baby made a small sound, barely audible. She's a fighter, the neonatologist said gently. But we need to get her to the NICU immediately. The next 72 hours are critical. Danielle nodded, releasing her daughter's hand. As they wheeled the incubator away, Taeyang finally moved. Can I? His voice was rough, uncertain. Can I go with her? The doctor nodded. Taeyang squeezed Danielle's hand once, then followed his daughter to the NICU. The neonatal intensive care unit was a strange, quiet place. Subdued lighting, constant beeping, tiny cribs housing impossibly small humans fighting for every breath. Taeyang stood beside his daughter's incubator, staring at the smallest person he'd ever seen. She was covered in monitoring equipment. A ventilator helped her breathe. IVs fed her nutrients. Her premature digestive system couldn't process yet. She'll be here for months, the neonatologist explained. Premature infants this young face significant challenges, lung development, feeding difficulties, potential neurological issues. The next few days will tell us a lot. What are her chances? Taeyang asked quietly. The doctor hesitated. Honestly, 60% survival, lower for avoiding serious complications. Taeyang's jaw clenched. But, the doctor added, she's already beaten odds by being born alive and breathing. Some babies this age don't manage that. She's a fighter. Taeyang placed his hand against the incubator's plastic wall, as close as he could get to touching her. You hear that? He whispered. You're a fighter, just like your mother. The baby's tiny chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. Taeyang had faced violence without flinching, had killed without remorse, had built an empire on fear and precision. But watching his daughter fight for each breath broke something inside him. Please, he whispered. To gods he didn't believe in, to fate, to the universe itself. Please let her survive. Take anything from me. Anything. Just let her live. Danielle was moved to recovery, but she refused to stay in bed. I need to see her, she kept saying. I need to be with her. The nurses wheeled her to the NICU in a chair, and when she saw the incubator, saw how small her daughter was, she started crying again. Oh, baby girl, she whispered, placing her hand next to Taeyang's against the plastic. You're so tiny, but you're so strong. They sat like that for hours, both parents keeping vigil over their premature daughter, united in fear and hope. What should we name her? Danielle asked quietly. Taeyang was silent for a long moment. Amara, he finally said. It means eternal in Korean, grace in Jamaican. He looked at Danielle. She's a miracle. She deserves a name that reflects that. Danielle smiled through her tears. Amara Lee. I like it. Amara Richards Lee, Taeyang corrected. Danielle looked at him in surprise. She's both of ours, Taeyang said. Both of our cultures. Both of our names. Amara Richards Lee, Danielle repeated, testing it. Perfect. The days that followed were a blur of tests, treatments, and terrifying setbacks. Amara developed jaundice. Then a potential heart murmur. Then feeding difficulties. Each crisis sent Danielle into panic. But Taeyang remained steady, a rock she could cling to when everything felt impossible. He moved a cot into Danielle's hospital room, refusing to leave. His organization could run without him for a while. Min-jae could handle business. Right now, his only job was being here. On the 5th day, Amara's ventilator was reduced. She's breathing more on her own, the neonatologist said. This is excellent progress. On day 12, she opened her eyes for the first time, huge, dark, taking in the world with serious intensity. She looks like you, Danielle whispered. She has your stubbornness, Taeyang replied, smiling. On day 20, Danielle was allowed to hold her daughter for the first time, kangaroo care, the nurses called it, skin-to-skin contact that helped premature babies thrive. Amara, still tiny but growing, was carefully placed against Danielle's bare chest. The moment their skin touched, Amara's heart rate steadied. Her breathing relaxed. Danielle sobbed. She knows me, she whispered. She knows her mama. Taeyang watched them, his hand gentle on Danielle's shoulder, and felt something he'd never experienced before. Complete, terrifying love. 2 months after birth, Amara was finally strong enough to leave the NICU. Still small, only 5 pounds, but healthy. Breathing on her own, eating, thriving. The day they brought her home to the safe house felt surreal. The building that had been a fortress, a prison, a battleground, now held a nursery soft colors, careful monitoring, but also warmth and hope. Taeyang carried the car seat like he was transporting explosives, terrified of jostling her. She's not made of glass, Danielle said, amused despite herself. She's 5 pounds. She might as well be. They settled into a new routine, feeding every 3 hours, diaper changes, endless laundry, sleepless nights. Taeyang's men watched their fearsome leader become a devoted father, and whispered in amazement. He who'd never shown softness would spend hours holding Amara, letting her sleep on his chest, murmuring in Korean and broken patois. He attended every pediatrician appointment with the intensity he'd once reserved for business deals. He threatened a subordinate who smoked near the building, worried about third-hand exposure. You've changed, Min-jae observed one day. Yes, Taeyang agreed, not looking up from where he was gently rocking Amara. I have. Is it weakness? No. Taeyang's voice was quiet but certain. It's purpose. 3 months after Amara's birth, on a quiet Sunday morning, Taeyang found Danielle on the nursery floor, crying. He was beside her instantly. What's wrong? Is Amara? She's fine. Sleeping. Danielle wiped her eyes. I keep thinking about my father. About how close he came. What could have happened? Taeyang pulled her against him. He's gone. He can't hurt you anymore. I know. But I also keep thinking. She looked up at him. What kind of world did we bring her into? You're a crime lord. I'm a refugee. We're not normal. No, Taeyang agreed. We're not. Doesn't that scare you? Terrifies me. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But you know what scares me more? The thought of not having you. Not having her. Going back to who I was before you stumbled into my life. A cold mafia king. An empty man. His voice was raw. You gave me something I didn't know I was missing. Purpose. Family. Love. Danielle's breath caught. I love you, Danielle Richards. The words came out rough, unpracticed, but utterly sincere. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first night. Maybe when you sassed me in front of my men. Maybe when I saw our daughter's heartbeat on that ultrasound. But somewhere along the way, you became my world. Tears streamed down Danielle's face. I love you too, she whispered. Even though you're impossible and overbearing and... He kissed her, cutting off her words. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. So what now? Danielle asked. We just... live? Raise our daughter in a mafia fortress? We build something new. Taeyoung's expression was thoughtful. I can't leave my organization entirely, but I can change how I operate, make things safer, more legitimate. For her, he glanced toward the nursery. She deserves a father who comes home every night. And me? You deserve a choice. He took her hand. Stay with me, not because you're trapped or scared or have nowhere else to go, but because you want to, because we're building something together. Danielle looked at their intertwined hands, his tattooed, scarred from violence, hers smaller, marked by different struggles. I want to stay, she said. Not because I have to, because I choose to. You and Amara, you're my family now. Taeyang kissed her forehead. Then let's build a life. A real one. Together. From the nursery, Amara made a small sound. Both parents were on their feet instantly, moving to her crib. She was awake, her dark eyes looking up at them with that serious expression she'd been born with. Danielle lifted her carefully, and Taeyang wrapped his arms around them both. Hello, princess, he murmured. Did you have a good sleep? Amara yawned, her tiny mouth opening wide. Danielle laughed. She's not impressed by your crime empire. Good. She shouldn't be. Taeyang stroked one finger down Amara's impossibly soft cheek. She's going to be better than both of us. They stood like that Jamaican mother, Korean father, and their miracle daughter, a family forged from trauma, built on survival, and sustained by love. Not perfect. Not conventional, but unbreakably, fiercely theirs. 6 months later, the photographs would have scandalized Kingston and shocked Seoul. Taeyang Lee, the Korean mafia king, on a blanket in a private garden, letting his 8-month-old daughter grab his tattooed fingers. Danielle beside him, wearing a sundress, laughing as Amara tried to eat grass. She's definitely your daughter, Danielle said, stubborn about everything. She's ours, Taeyang corrected, pulling both of them close. And she's perfect. Amara babbled something incomprehensible, her chubby hands waving. Min-jae approached, keeping a respectful distance. My lord, the merger documents are ready for your signature. Later, Taeyang said without looking away from his daughter. But sir, the timeline. Later. Min-jae bowed and retreated. Danielle smiled. You really have changed. Only in the ways that matter. Taeyang kissed her temple. Business will always be there. But these moments, they're finite, precious. Amara reached up, grabbing Taeyang's face with sticky hands. He didn't flinch, just smiled and kissed her palm. You know what? Danielle said softly. I think we're going to be okay. More than okay. Taeyang's arm tightened around her. We're going to be extraordinary. And looking at their daughter alive, thriving, loved, Danielle believed him. They'd survived monsters, crossed oceans, defied odds. Together, they'd built something impossible. A family born from ruin. And it was beautiful. Thank you for staying until the very end of Danielle and Taeyang's journey. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tales. I have so many more stories to tell. Click the next video on your screen right now. And drop a comment telling me, what was your favorite moment? I read every single one. Until next time, my friends. The end.